See if I
How
can
are
trace
you?
I'm I'm surviving. How are you? Good
What about it?
Lord.
Oh, I'm okay. I mean, could always be worse. So my wife likes to remind me. So
Great outlook.
it's not as helpful in the moment, but it's real. So
I appreciate it. Okay.
what's up?
So what we're running into right now, excuse me, in terms of those commitment letters,
Hmm.
whether directly from housing authority or an LMHA or another source, so like others like city funding or other housing providers or other healthcare providers, is the ability to clearly identify and put a dollar amount to the commitment.
Right.
First of all, for different reasons. So for example, the city of Denton has some home ARP funding that we're considering allocating for TPRA. We
Yeah.
also have ARP funding through the treasury that we're likely going to release another round for nonprofit capacity support, which could cover a lot of things.
Sure. Yeah.
And both of those are contingent on council approval, right? So,
Right.
and come with their own separate timelines and everything. So we have an idea of what we could hypothetically commit, or contingent on council approval commit. Also, the housing authority has, those stability vouchers that they're looking into and being able to, wanting to commit as well. What we're running into is how do we share the love between the different applications? And I'm sure with us being the problem child repeatedly, and wanting to submit multiple applications, it's probably just complicating it for all of us. But just the best way to go about, like articulating all of that. So just being able to concretely say what and how much, and then B, identifying who, and divvying it out that way. And I know you can't write it for us, and you probably have to be somewhat cryptic in your reply, but just trying to, like, I'm at the point where, like, do we just need to divide and conquer and say your application gets housing and your application gets healthcare? Like, what, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, again, like some of that is stuff that I can't really address.
Right.
But I also recognize the vagueness of all of this. So, I mean, I think from a partner's perspective, like if I were someone that were being asked to write this letter or this commitment, I think something that might make me feel comfortable or more comfortable would be like a minimum commitment versus like a hard commitment in terms of like, I guess
Yeah,
not
I hear what you're
necessarily a
saying.
hard commitment, but like because it has to be a specific commitment, right?
Yeah.
But I think that we would accept like a range of commitment. We just need to put a dollar amount in, and we would have to go with the minimum in order to be able to like assess whether or not it meets the criteria for points. Now, I don't know that that would help someone like feel more comfortable in this scenario. And I also recognize your position at the city because you can't commit resources that haven't gone through the process.
Right, officially allocated, right.
Right. So I think you can, and I think the other thing is I think you can make that contingent, like you can make the commitment contingent on like council approval or whatever contingencies you need to put in there to cover your bases as the city or as any partner. Because the other thing is we're talking about is like this is it's a huge undertaking in like weeks. So I think it would be unreasonable to expect that it would come without contingencies. So there's that. Y'all can definitely build those sorts of things into the letters of commitment.
So what we're thinking is like contingent on council approval. The city of Denton could commit we were thinking like a maximum of X number of dollars, per applicant or something like that. And they will be multi-year contracts for us, at least for the home ARP
Yep.
portion of
Well,
it.
and remember, this is a multi-year contract too, right? So this is
Right.
also a 3-year deal. I know
Right.
you
And
have more than
so,
that with Hallmark, but whatever.
yeah. And so I think maybe like coaching the housing authority through it as well. Theirs would probably look something like, contingent on, final allocation of vouchers, being willing to allocate X number of vouchers.
And that one's going to be hard too, because if we're talking just specifically about the stability vouchers, I mean, I have no way of knowing like what the allocation is going to be, but it's going to be a fraction of what it was for EHV.
Right.
In my mind anyway.
Yeah. We had a meeting with our housing authority yesterday, and they did mention that they're getting another like 15 or 18 vouchers from HUD, and they kind of even specified that they would be for homeless, but then when we followed up, they were like, no, you can't have those. So I'm going to push back again. They were just kind of like, we're not going to commit them kind of thing. So
yeah,
which they have their own reasons, I'm sure.
oh, for sure.
But we are trying to communicate, like, obviously these programs can provide some more wraparound support that maybe your caseworkers aren't able to all the time and that sort of thing. So, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the sell, right, for your housing authority, for sure.
Yeah. So if the housing authority were to write kind of a community-wide commitment letter, they would still have to identify like a minimum dollar amount, so to speak, per each applicant organization, right?
Yeah, I think so. For the housing authority, what makes the most sense is like one, in my mind, I'm thinking like the way that you're going to arrive at a dollar value is by using unit allocations, right? So like, if we're going to allocate 5 stability vouchers to Giving Grace, valued at whatever their average voucher is for their housing choice voucher program, like, I think that's kind of how I would establish the value. Not that they have to like, and it could be like, between 3 and 7 or something like that. And just, to just try to put some parameters on the thing contingent on, ultimate allocation, or like the MOU that is required to be developed, like being, developed and approved and submitted and all that stuff. So I do think though, in order for your applicant, or in order for any applicant to get points for that, it's going to need to name them specifically in that commitment.
Okay. All right.
Now, that said, a community-wide commitment to like that is ideal for the CoC, right? Because we're going to have to synthesize all this stuff and figure out, okay, how many units and how much is being leveraged to PSH, how much of it is being leveraged to Rapid, and then I don't know if they're really expecting us to leverage permanent housing for like the PHR or the THRRH project, to be perfectly honest. But we'll have to go in there and pull that apart as well and see what kind of commitments we've got for those types of projects. I mean, they're still eligible for points in the local competition. I just don't know that those projects are really going to factor into the overall commitment for the CoC. I think it's just Rapid and just PSH. But a community-wide commitment, I think, would be really helpful, because it would just be easier for us to break the back end.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see how many PSH applications come through, because I think that's the one locally most people are scared of.
Really?
Yeah, I'm trying my hardest to make them not scared of it, but I think it's
funny because, in my mind, at least, Denton has always been kind of PSH heavy and needing more Rapid. And now it seems like it's just like this swing to the opposite direction. And there's a lot of Rapid available in the community. and not as much.
Well, technically
Yes.
right now, we're about to enter into like almost no rapid being available at all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Is that
well,
because of the ESGCV funds expiring and all that? Yeah.
pretty much. I
Yeah.
know CoC has theirs that they've submitted for renewal, but it's still just, a drop in the bucket when you look at our homeless population, and it's
Mhm.
yeah, which is why we're considering TBRA, supportive services through home ARP, to kind of help make up for some of that deficit. So
This is completely off topic, but are y'all going to do any capital projects or like build anything?
we looked into it. We're only getting 1.7,
Oh, yeah.
and so it's just not.
It's not going to go very far.
Our committee will be considering. So we have a community services advisory committee that's going to be getting their feedback, and then we're going to draft our allocation plan and put it out for comment, take it to council for a public hearing and all that stuff. But we're going to kind of put both the two emergent needs in front of them in terms of affordable housing and kind of TDRA and supportive services are some of our more emergent needs, and just kind of paint the picture for them. Like, we could encourage development, affordable housing development. Here's realistically the number of units we might see in the community, and do the same comparison for TBRA and supportive services. Like Fort Worth got 10 million, and 8.5 of it's going to develop stuff, which makes sense. They were just like, put it all in development. Totally makes sense. They've got the funding to do it, and a huge chunk of change for the staff capacity to help manage it internally. So it's just not quite the same for us. We did take it to our housing authority and our CHODO last year when we first learned about our allocation, and both of them kind of came back and were like, it's not really enough for us to pursue.
That makes sense.
So slightly disappointing, but we do have needs for it elsewhere. So
yeah, for sure. Well, what other supplemental related questions might you have?
I think that's it. Let me I have a whole room of people right here. Like, we
I can hear them back there.
Sorry if it's noisy. Like, our third community planning meeting for the SNOFO. So
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's helpful. We've been able to talk through, okay, you're applying for this, and how we're leveraging each other's resources and supporting. So it has been really nice to be able to do that.
That warms my heart.
Yeah. So I will probably just go ahead and log off, and then go back in and share what I've learned. And then if we have any more questions, we'll jump on.
Hop back on whenever. We'll be here until 1.
All right. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
No problem.
There we go. Okay. Yeah. So fire away, whatever questions you've got.
The first question she has, and I couldn't see this anywhere in there, so I think the answer is no, but she wants to know, under any components, is there any money for prevention? Or is it all, it's all literal homeless?
Yeah. And that's a HUD requirement, Terrence. That's not something that we're imposing.
Yep.
So yeah, no money for prevention, unfortunately. And now some of I did want to clarify though, because some folks they whenever they say prevention, they might be thinking of something different. There's money for to rehouse someone who's experiencing literal homelessness, and then to keep them housed. So depending on some applicants, they think about prevention. They're actually talking about like the supportive services that go along with keeping someone in housing.
Yep.
If they encounter someone and they're literally homeless, they house them and they lose that placement, they can rehouse them, but they cannot seek out participants that are not currently literally homeless.
Right. That was my understanding.
Yep.
Okay. But I'll make that mention to her, because maybe they'll want to budget some money for those that they house to kind of keep housed for a while.
They definitely should. Yeah. We would encourage them to, for sure.
Okay. So the letter. So
are you talking about the certification of consistency?
Yeah, certification of consistency.
Okay.
I have it open.
Yep.
That was new. That one I didn't have to.
Really?
This? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think what happens in the local CoC, like what probably happens in Maricopa, is that the CoC lead does that on behalf of the applicants. And because we're spread out so far, there's like 40 consolidated planning jurisdictions in our CoC. So we ask the applicant to do it And so I can now, at first I was like, oh, I'm surprised he hasn't heard this one before, but that makes more sense now if you're familiar with a single county CoC.
Exactly.
That's
Especially
probably-
here, like we make jokes about how it's the great state of Maricopa, because like it's Maricopa and Phoenix,
Or
and
nothing.
then a few
Yeah.
other counties, but like everything's centered here. So
Yeah.
that makes sense that they would handle that. That's they would just like not even bother us with it. So the form you sent me already has Elizabeth Yevich pre-filled. So is that going to, should I just email that to
that is-
her?
Yeah, that is your person. And if you are in fact working with Panhandle Community Services, which I know now, oh, excuse me. If you are working with an applicant that is in a rural part of the state where there is no consolidated planning jurisdiction,
Okay.
you reach out to TDHCA and they will handle your certification for you. My
Okay.
experience with them is it's been pretty quick. I wouldn't delay it. If you could get it over there,
I'm doing
either
it today.
or tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think, well, today, because tomorrow's Saturday, but
Yeah.
that will give you, access to the flexibility that's built in on the off chance they don't get it back to you before the application deadline.
Right.
I've never had them deny someone almost every time. Every time it's consistent with the state's consolidated plan. The other thing is if the applicant you're working with is planning on working in an area where there is a consolidated planning jurisdiction, they do not need to seek the consent or alignment with all consolidated planning jurisdictions. Just one will satisfy our requirements. So,
Gotcha.
so
in
yeah.
PCS's case, they're going to be working with a bunch of counties.
But almost all of them are going to be under the state's jurisdiction. The only ones that I can think that might not be would be like Potter and Randall. So just right, the area just outside Amarillo, but everywhere else up in the Panhandle is all state jurisdiction.
Perfect. So
Yeah.
on the form itself, I'm going to send this over to Elizabeth Yevich. Should
Yep.
I copy you?
You do not need to copy us.
Okay.
No, just maintain, you'll want obviously copies of your written communication in case it gets to a scenario where you need to ask for more time.
Okay.
But
And that's as long as
yeah.
I sent it by the 4th, which I'll do.
Yep.
Then that means we're kind of covered if we need an extension to get
Yeah.
it back, right? Okay.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
And we just need to get it back by the time by the 11th, right?
I mean, that's ideal.
Right.
If it's not back by the 11th, it's not like a deal breaker for us. The deal breaker for us comes when we compile the priority listing for the board's approval. At that point, if we have an applicant without a certification of consistency, we can't include them in that priority listing, so we would remove them at that point. But that we're looking at like October the 4th, that's supposed to happen. So realistically, you'll get it back before then. But if on the off chance any applicant didn't have a certification of consistency when we're compiling that list for the board, I think the deadline in the RFP is the 3rd, maybe.
Okay.
For
Sounds right.
when all of the materials, even materials that were granted an extension on, are required to be submitted. Because at that point, like if you don't have your certification, I can't build a list and then have to modify it after they've approved it. So
yeah.
I'm
just going to send it today.
Yeah, I would send it today. Like I said, we get all of ours at THN. We get all of ours from TDHCA. They're really generally pretty quick. I think if you communicate to Elizabeth your deadline of the 11th, she should be able to accommodate that. But again, if not, you met the requirement to get an extension.
On the form, so applicant name, contact name, number, that's easy. Name of the program is easy. Project name is fine. Location of the project, should I just put the home office of PCS for that?
I would list out the counties that
Okay.
they are proposing to serve.
Sure.
The other thing is on that, in the project name. Let me pull up a version of it because I don't have it memorized.
Okay.
Let me see here. Yeah, so the name of the federal program to which the applicant is applying, I would use the name of the NOFA itself. So it is the CoC program, but it's that supplemental, and then you can use the FRN number as well, just to make sure that they know that it's not just like the annual CoC program.
So the fiscal year 2022, that acronym, Supplemental Rural and Unsheltered Notice of Funding Opportunity, that one?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
Got it.
no,
No?
sorry, maybe I misspoke. It's the HUD language. Let me pull that for you in
The
case.
HUD
I think
language.
our RFP is a little bit different from the HUD language.
It probably is. I think I have that open though.
Yeah.
It is.
It's another long one though.
Yeah.
The
CoC Special NOFO to address unsheltered and rural homelessness through the CoC program.
Yep,
Okay.
that's the one.
All right, we'll do that one.
And then they have the FRN number, you know, if it would be helpful, because there is a different FRN number from the annual competition. So I don't know how many of these Elizabeth is getting right now. But just, you know, you want to, again, just make sure that it's distinct from the annual CoC program competition.
Yep. Gotcha.
Yep.
All right. Let's see what else I got. So I'm still working with her to get the notice of intent to apply. And now I understand that a lot of that's just to kind of get an idea of who is going to apply, but you also need to look it over, make sure that they're on the right path, right? Like, yeah, that's approved activities or whatnot.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you'll start in that application portal, you'll start with that intent to apply. We're monitoring that really closely. And as soon as they're submitted, as long as they're submitted within like a reasonable, you know, I'm not reviewing stuff at 1 o'clock in the morning, but as long as they're submitted during business hours, we're reviewing them like within the hour, just to make sure that everything looks good. Y'all are on the right path. And then we'll approve that. The system will send you an automated message and open it up to the remainder of the application. If we have questions or have concerns, we will email you and send that back to the intent to apply for you to modify whatever needs to be modified in there. If it's something like really easy that we can fix, like a typo or something like that on the back end, you know, we might not send you back, just for the sake of brevity and wanting, you know, we want you to have as much time as possible as well.
Yep.
But yeah, so it is the intent to apply and the full application are both open right now. So as soon as you finish that intent to apply, you will get access to the full application. You don't have to wait, you know, there's no waiting period after or anything like that. It's, the approval is pretty quick.
Okay.
Yep.
In the intent to apply, there's a section where you list out the partners, and it sounds like you really only want to see the partners that they're also going to get letters from. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to interpret that, right? Like, we want to know about, you know, leverage housing or healthcare partnerships. Some applicants are in a unique position where the applicant's also a public housing authority. You know, they have an advantage.
I think they are. I think PSC is a public housing authority.
I think they might be, yeah. I think some applicants will have a distinct advantage over other applicants just by the simple fact that they have access to other housing resources internally that they can leverage.
Okay. So letters of support aren't necessarily required unless we list them there and they're one of those two things, the healthcare providers and the housing authorities. That, like, if they partner with like a food bank, or if they partner, you know, what, that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? Like, that's not necessary. Okay. Yeah.
So in the balance of state, like in our CoC, we have it's structured through regional governance through what we call local homeless coalitions. Those local homeless coalitions like help us carry out the duties of the CoC, like carrying out the point in time count, housing inventory count. So if an applicant comes to us from an area where there is a local homeless coalition, we would expect that there has been some communication with that local homeless coalition. And I'm talking about something that's in the full application now, not in the intent to apply, but that there has been some communication with that LHC and that the LHC supports the project. So we would look for a letter of support from the LHC. If you're in an area where there is no LHC, like, in fact, I believe the majority of the Panhandle, if not all of it, there's no LHC. In that scenario, you can submit 2 letters of support for the project, where the supporter could be a food pantry, right? It could be someone else in the community that's also working to end homelessness that endorses the applicant for the specific project that they're applying for. And so that part, though, is not in the intent to apply. It's in the full application. The intent to apply is really pretty preliminary. We just want to know
Okay.
what you're planning on doing, like a
So if I
summary.
list, if there's partners already listed in there, because they had submitted before, but it wasn't quite
Right.
the time. And then like, we're not gonna be married to like having documentation of those partners like down the road if we end up not.
No,
Okay.
no.
So in
The
her
only ones
case,
that you would be married to are if you're planning to leverage housing or healthcare, those partnerships, we will need some like firm written commitments from those groups.
perfect.
to-
And so when the application comes, the LHC, and then leverage, right? Is that?
Yeah. So in the
Okay.
application, there's two upload areas. Well, there's more than two upload areas, but there's two
Yeah.
main upload areas for this topic. One is the letter of support from the LHC or service partners or community partners. So that's one. The other is if you're leveraging housing or healthcare resources, that also requires its own upload. But if you name partners in like the development of the application, for example, like if you consulted with, I don't know, some county government or something like
Yeah,
that.
or there's a substance abuse treatment.
Yeah.
Council or
Yeah.
something, yeah.
Yeah. If you you know, and the only way that you would like be married to those groups is if you were also using their resources to leverage and get points, right? So
Gotcha.
we do ask like in the full application, and the intent there was to try to get you know, some community buy-in for these projects. So we ask like who you consulted in the development of the project application, who you know, who is going to help with the implementation and oversight of the project application. In rural communities, that's going to be a tougher ask, right? They're not going to have any official role in the project. They're not going to be like, you know, part of the evaluation team necessarily, but they should be like local accountability partners that are engaged and like participative in the process. But yeah, they don't have an official role, you know, if the project goes to award.
Good deal. She's been collecting them anyway,
Good.
from local partners, which is awesome. I just, with the timeline, her being out of town on Labor Day weekend, I don't want her to like suck up too much oxygen. So like in her case, if they're a public housing authority, that's probably going to take care of the housing leverage piece because they do that. Now so in her case, I can say, you know, keep bringing them. Like if you get community partners on board, don't stop sending letters. But if you need to, if there's one that we don't have that you have to focus on, if you're going to leverage a healthcare in this scenario. Okay. And the LHC, which.
And well, there is no LHC in the area that I think we're talking about. So in that scenario, just two letters of support. That's it.
That makes sense to me. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Not going to get any more for more letters of support. Now, in the application itself, it asks to identify groups that were consulted in the development and implementation of the project or will be involved in the implementation. And that is a scored criteria, but it's capped at 3. So like it's 1 point per organization. So we're not asking for any other supporting documentation on that either, or it's kind of on the honor system. You know, we would expect that like if the project goes to award and we come to the community to talk about it, it's not like a surprise.
Yeah, they're like, who's that?
You listed in your application. Yeah.
Like there's a homeless problem? No. Okay.
Yeah. Surprise. Yeah.
Okay. So one thing confused me on the intent to apply, especially with prevention not being pieces. There's hang on here. Component type, that's not it. Okay. Eligible activities, there was 3 choices. Arrears, capacity building, and the other one. The repairs.
Yeah, so that's a little bit different from probably what you did in Maricopa County, right? Because I don't know that Maricopa had access to the rural set aside. I would kind of imagine they probably didn't. But under the rural set aside, in addition to your rapid PSH, THRRH, you know, main project types, there are additional activities that rural applicants. Yeah.
The additional, I just overlooked that word completely. Okay.
Yeah. So there's also restrictions on those additional activities in the RFP in terms of like dollar amounts. So one of them is emergency lodging, right? Like if you're planning to do emergency lodging, it has to be a percentage of your supportive service budget line.
Okay.
We're not looking for applications that are built around emergency lodging. That's just not the intent of that eligible additional eligible activity, but it is something that's available to a rural applicant that I would, encourage y'all to explore, or your client.
And is that like getting a hotel room or something like that while you're
Could be,
waiting to get? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it could be. So the emergency lodging one specifically is to add temporary capacity to the emergency or temporary housing system, right? So whether that's a hotel motel or that's an additional shelter bed somewhere, it could depend.
So that's what threw me off. So in every case, I don't see capacity building or repairs being an issue, but arrears. So is that for? So if they're already housed, we can't service them anyway. So just paying them back rent to stop them from getting evicted isn't coverable. But is arrears in this case, like if they have something on the credit that shows that they need to pay this off before getting in, would that be what counts? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And I think it's not super clear, honestly. That one, right, that description that you just had is pretty obvious and straightforward, I think. But like, because these are all tenant-based rental assistance projects, once someone gets into housing, they're going to have a portion of the rent that's due to the landlord every month. So if they're not paying that portion of the rent, they're going to get kicked out. Right. And so if these arrears may be able to support those households to prevent eviction during participation as well.
Right. Okay.
So because right now the way it works is, if someone's on tenant-based rental assistance and they're not paying their utilities or their rent, the recipient of the funds, so the organization, can't use CoC program funds to make that go away, right? Like they have to find some other funding source to make that go away. And these eligible activities, or that specific eligible activity, can pay arrears. And so it's not like they're paying themselves, they're paying the landlord to wipe out those arrears. Yeah. But it's a really unique thing that I've not seen before in any of the CoC program stuff. So that one, now the capacity building, we in the RFP, I'm not sure if you caught this or not, but rural applicants are required to request the maximum in capacity building, which is 20% of the total award. So the total award, and I think in this, I'm trying to think, I don't remember the specifics of the RFP off the top of my head, but I want to say the maximum request was like 1 million.
Yeah, up to 200. The range is between 200,000 and 1 million.
1 million. Yep, annually. Yep. And so you could request through that 20% of your budget go to capacity building and use that. You can,
or you have to?
Well, you have to. Like from HUD's perspective, you can't. From our perspective, you have to. One, there's no planning funds that are associated with these grants, right? So those capacity building dollars are going to be used to carry out the plan in the local community, but also for the capacity building needs of the organization, right? It's not like, it's just such a unique opportunity that we think that we don't want to let that pass by.
So it sounds like it's one of those things that like funders don't usually fund.
No.
And so now there's an opportunity to have this money to strengthen the organizations. Like now you're talking about like training and like, what about like systems and like infrastructure? Like what do you like all that kind of stuff?
Training, professional development, staff retention. You can use it so far as to like, if you can do SOAR trainings for the community. Like you could do a lot of different things with the capacity. I think it's pretty vague.
Cool. So it's not just organizational capacity building, it could be community capacity building.
It has to be connected to your organization, but if the capacity building efforts for your organization benefit the larger community, that would be a non-issue.
Okay. When you say retention, are you talking about like retention bonuses or?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's just so remarkable that it's kind of like I don't know, but that's what they said is that you can use it for professional development, bonuses, pay. Well,
that makes sense.
Pay of staff.
Before I was a grant writer, so before this, I worked at two organizations that do have a Texas presence, so you might be familiar with them. One was US Vets. I was an operations manager there. So I have some kind of familiarity with some of these things. And then prior to that, I worked at Chicanos Port of Causa, which has a Texas presence as well, CPLC. And I remember that I was working on a program that I think was ARPA, the rescue plan specifically wrote in some money to like give retention bonuses and hiring bonuses because everybody's jumping around or it's stressful. Like Sally, it's just, I mean, it's already stressful. And then add a pandemic on top of it. It's like, oh my God, like who wants to stick around for this? But it's good.
It's exacerbated in rural communities as well. So I think that I'd really recognize that and wanted to try to do something. Whether this will be sufficient to make a difference, we'll see. But
what about hiring bonuses? Like if she's going to bring on new staff for this, would that would count as capacity building? So she could, when we're doing the budget, they could have the money that they use just for the staff, the ERE and the salary, but use some of this capacity building dollars to do hiring bonuses because it's really tough to find people right now to do this work, right? Yeah. So that's great.
And you could even structure your benefit package to say, like, if you're going for your MSW, like we'll pay for your clinical supervision or whatever the case may be to attract and retain staff that are going to, stick and stay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I wish I was in a rural community.
God. Okay, so that's fantastic. So I would definitely select capacity building. And then I guess I could select arrears and they either use it or they don't.
Right. Yeah. You don't have to. The main thing, and I don't know, hopefully I communicated this via email. The main thing that cannot change from your intent to apply is the component type and the funding source. So like if you decided that at some point you really wanted to do unsheltered, you'd have to abandon that application and start over. Same thing as if you decided you're going to do rapid now and then you decide later, oh, PSH would really fit better with like the stability vouchers or whatever. You'd have to abandon and start over. So, but beyond that, like activities within the eligible budget line items, y'all can, finesse that as much as you need to. The other thing is we've removed the eSNAPS application itself from the evaluation, the competitive evaluation, right? So once these applications are submitted on the 11th, we'll evaluate them, the IRT will score them. We'll work together to complete those eSNAPS applications. They are due on the 11th, but that's just because we need people to demonstrate the capacity to actually do it. You're probably familiar how complex it is. It's very overwhelming for someone that's new, and we don't want someone to get in.
It was very overwhelming for me. I was like, what is going on?
Oh no, it is this year in particular. It's really tough to follow.
I just went through it once, so hopefully I can go through it again. And that's good to know because they told us that thankfully at the Maricopa CoC too, which was like, it's submit it with your application, but the eSNAPS itself isn't due to HUD until like October. So they'll work with us to make sure that it looks. I mean, we'll obviously do our best, be complete as possible.
Awesome. We'll work collaboratively on that part after the applications are due. So
do you want me to actually submit eSNAPS or just export the PDF?
Either way, it doesn't. I mean, it's
for you. It doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I don't think we had. I think in the RFP we did say to submit it.
You can unlock it, right?
What's that?
We
can unlock it. I think the reason that we asked to submit is because we do frequently get folks that submit to the wrong thing or submit as the wrong type, and we don't want to find out later on down the road that they actually accidentally submitted a HMIS application or something. It happens. So I think the instructions are to submit or to utilize the flexibility in the RFP.
Awesome. So if it's the last hour and we only have 1 hour left to panic on some stuff, we'll panic on the local application more so than the eSNAPS application. Okay.
Yeah, well, make sure you read the RFP.
Yep.
Because in order to take advantage of that flexibility, you do have to demonstrate some progress towards completing the eSNAPS application.
It's gonna be mostly complete. I just in my own anxiety and paranoia over new processes. It's gonna be complete. It's probably gonna be like pretty good, like almost all the way. But let's just it's probably until I do it a couple of times, and I'm like, I like to know where I am on the Dunning-Kruger curve. Like I know I'm here. Okay. So I'm sure deposits are fine for money, right? Like this.
Security deposits? Yep, security deposits. So the eligible, kinds of activities, security deposit, obviously the rental assistance itself, the housing quality standards inspections, rent reasonableness determinations, all that goes under the rental assistance line. Your supportive services, we're talking about holistic case management, we're talking about SOAR, we're talking about, any kind of outreach that needs to be conducted to identify participants, especially in a rural area. We would expect that there's probably going to be a fair amount of outreach to bring folks into the program. Mostly you're looking at like salaries under supportive services. There are a bunch of eligible categories, which I'm sure you're well aware. We're really asking folks to focus on the supportive services that are going to help people maintain their housing. So if everything else went away, what's necessary to help somebody maintain their housing? And we think that that's like holistic case management. And so really focusing on pairing these this rental assistance with a dedicated case manager with an appropriate caseload size. Like, this is not the time to be, it's not going to look better to us like if they have
100.
outrageous case management ratios.
Like 15 to 20 or something.
Yeah, something reasonable. I think the other thing that we're really looking for as well on the supportive services is the integration of SOAR into the project itself. So right now we have a thing going with SAMHSA and with the Policy Research Associates, who is the SAMHSA SOAR technical assistance firm right now nationally. And so
SOAR is the like social security or like the benefits.
Yeah, it stands for SSI, SSDI, Outreach, Access, and Recovery.
Okay.
And so the idea there is that each of these projects will have someone on staff whose primary function is to do SOAR. Not necessarily 100% of their time is SOAR, but that it is a primary function of their job. And that can be paid out of the case management cost within the supportive services line item. 100% of their salary. If 100% of their time is dedicated to SOAR, 100% of their salary can be dedicated to, can be paid out of HUD CoC funds. So, I can't tell you exactly how to like structure that part of the application.
But just make sure that it's clear that we have identified that as like, we're going to have somebody that's dedicated to SOAR for this project. And she'll know better than I will. Like, and I know that one person could do that and spend 50% of their time on that. But if it'll be realistic.
Yep.
Or we'll just hire somebody for that. Okay, that's awesome. This has been very helpful. I really appreciate you doing this, especially because I think I got an out of office from you the first time I sent you an email. I'm like, oh no.
No, I just set that up because I get so many emails throughout the day and a lot of non-competition related stuff that still needs to be addressed. And so I'm behind on my emails generally, unless it's competition related.
Gotcha. All right, because I'm sure I'll still be bothering you for the next week or so.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine.
And I think those are a lot of the big questions, but like, the capacity building, I think that's going to be exciting for them.
Yeah.
The
other thing that we haven't really talked about that I would just bring up, that I'm bringing up to everybody, is, PHAs were invited to administer these housing stability vouchers, and they don't know exactly how many housing stability vouchers they're going to get. They have to actually apply for them. There's a notice that, given the fact that your folks are out on conference, they may not have seen yet. But that notice is, let me just pull it up and see if, hold on just a second. But basically that notice is, the application process for these, what they're calling stability vouchers, that HUD is encouraging PHAs to pair with supportive services for the in the continuum of care program. So that's kind of a tough ask, one, because you don't know how many vouchers we're talking about. Let me send this to everybody so it'll show up in the recording. So that's the notice there. It makes reference to the supplemental NOFO. It's a lot to digest. But at the core of it, again, HUD is telling PHAs, okay, you can apply for these vouchers and you're prioritized if you're working with a CoC. that is also applying for the supplemental MILFO. So trying to dovetail those resources together. I think there's some blind spots there and some holes in the logic. One, because it's going to be really hard to pair it with a specific supportive service without knowing how many vouchers we're talking about. But I think, in terms of the eligibility of the project, folks that are referred for a housing stability voucher that meet the criteria of literal homeless should be eligible for the CoC program. So it's going to depend entirely on how the PHA operationalizes the stability vouchers themselves, right? Like if they're going to use the stability vouchers to help people experience at risk of homelessness, then of course they wouldn't be eligible to be supported with CoC supportive services, right? But if they set it up to where we're going to use our stability voucher allocation to serve people experiencing literal homelessness, then you could think about it as like a situation where someone is referred to the PHA, gets a voucher from the stability vouchers, then is at the same time is also getting a referral to the CoC funded program and is being supported with the supportive services from the CoC and the rental assistance from the PHA, and marry those two things together. It's quite complicated to figure out in 6 days. I'll be perfectly honest, like I still don't really understand exactly what all they're asking for.
Well, this application is not due till October, is that right?
That PHA application is not due until October. That's correct. It's due on October the 20th. And PHAs that are interested in those vouchers will need a letter of support from the CoC.
So is it possible, because like I don't think I'm going to be able to understand this enough to communicate it. So is there anything that we can or cannot do in this application right now that's going to screw that up if they want to be more flexible with that? You know what I mean? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it does. I don't think so. Not in the literal sense of like screwing it up, because we want
like painting them into a corner, eliminating options on how to use them, that kind of thing.
No, I don't think so. I will say that there's one way that you could do it that would be definitely more advantageous than another way. But it is going to be a big lift to try to figure out before the 11th. And I think that you could, or an applicant could use the stability vouchers as a housing leverage. But again, it's going to require them to figure out a lot of things in a very short amount of time.
Okay.
Specifically, like who they're going to target. Are they all on the same page with targeting people that are literally homeless? And if that's the case, then it would be actually relatively easy to satisfy the requirements for our process. And then, they would have, like you said, until October the 20th to work on the process for the PIH notice.
Okay. And can you hang on 1 second? She just emailed me. She has a question maybe to relay to you, and then one sec here. Hey, Jim, are you there?
Yes.
All right, I have her on the phone. She has a question. I'm going to see. Hopefully this works. I don't know if this
Yeah.
will work or not.
We'll see. Yeah.
If you'll be able to hear her.
Oh, not really. Try now.
Hang on, I'm not ready yet. I'm going to take out my AirPods
Oh,
and
okay.
try a different way here. 1 second. Soon-ish. Jim, can you hear it?
Kind of. Try. Say something else.
Take off the Bluetooth.
Oh, that sounds a lot better.
All right. All right, Jim, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, Audra, go for it.
Hey Jim, Audra from New York, and no, I don't ever take a break, as you said. Okay, I'm reading this intent to apply so I can send him some comments. And
Yeah.
the second to last question says, do you understand that applicants are strongly encouraged to use the living wage calculator
Yep.
when calculating supportive service budgets?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm familiar with the MIT calculator. We use that for our tops and for our living wages. I'm not sure what it means when calculating support budget.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think our intent there is for the folks that you intend to employ with these funds in your supportive service, and like, so your case managers, your voucher, if you have, specific like voucher administrators or rental assistance administrators, that they are employed at a living wage. So that was kind of the intent. I recognize now that language is probably a little vague, but it is intended, we don't want you to short sell yourself or the folks that are going to be working on the project. This is a really great opportunity to respond to the economic conditions that we're seeing develop in terms of staff wages and retention. And so the idea is that y'all would use that living wage calculator when developing thresholds for how much you will pay someone employed by the project.
Okay, we have a wage scale, and I think it's based on
Beautiful.
it updates. But yes, I don't think that'll be a problem, but I will verify with our HR guy where our wage scale comes from.
And I will just say that there are no other questions related to the MIT living wage calculator in the remainder of the application.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
All right, Audra, you good?
I'm good, thank you.
You're welcome. I'll shoot you a text later. I'll end up wanting just to talk over this with you, but it could be Tuesday probably.
You can call me whenever. If I'm someplace loud and I can't answer, I'll shoot you a text. But
I could also leave you a very long rambling voicemail too.
yeah, but no, you're fine. Call if you want to talk through it while it's fresh, because I can get that.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm about to hit send on this email.
All right, hey, travel safe.
All right. So I think that's it for me for right now. I could probably figure out more stuff to ask, but I have 2 deadlines I have to hit right now for something else. So
Okay. Yeah, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. And yeah, we'll do the best we can to support y'all through this application. Hopefully we can bring some money to the state. That's the idea.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And believe me, I know, like, you don't have to explain your deadlines as far as HUD goes, because I've already been through it once, and I know. I know, like, HUD said, do this impossible thing really fast, and he said, okay.
Man, didn't they though? The worst one is actually the annual, because the annual, they only gave us 60 days. I mean, with this, they accelerated a process that really should have probably taken a year of preparation into 120 days. But it feels a little bit more manageable than the annual because there's existing money riding on the annual competition. It's not like, this is all kind of theoretical right now, and if it doesn't happen, people aren't going to be any worse off than they were before the 60-day window. But with the other one, if we bomb that, I mean, it could have very real implications for Texans all over the state, and it's not a nice thought. And I know every CoC has the same is in the same position. So we're just going to do the best we can. That's all, I think all we can really do.
Yep.
And hope for the best. And I think we have a pretty good shot at all of these. The rural, I think we have a pretty good shot, in terms of the balance of state. We have the largest rural set aside in the country. And so not that means that we're going to be the most competitive, but I think that we're, as far as rural COCs go, pretty well organized and are in a good position to respond to this sort of funding announcement. And then similarly on the unsheltered, we're like in the top 10% as far as like the bonus points associated with that unsheltered set aside. And I think we have a really good shot there as well. So at least that's what I'm telling myself to make this all worth it. But I'm really excited to see what y'all come up with. And I'm gonna stay on just because we have another 40 minutes left of this in case somebody else shows up. But I appreciate you coming and ask your questions. Please ask more as you go along. And like I said, we're here to support you however we can.
Super, I definitely appreciate it. You'll be hearing from me, and I'll probably hop on the office hours next Friday too.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, we'll do the same thing again next Friday.
Awesome. Thank you. You guys have a good weekend.
Hey, you too, Terrence. Have a good one.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, my turn.
I'm gonna pause the recording, Craig.
Okay.
Yeah, so Hannah, the question was, where do you start, right? Like, so in the application on SurveyMonkey or at THN Competition, .sm apply is where you would start. You'll do an intent to apply. There's not a whole lot of questions, but that's where you just like identify what you're planning to do, whether that's PSH or rapid. You select, you'll select the set aside that you're applying to, whether that's the unsheltered or rural. Give us some kind of really basic information. And then once you've collected and submitted that stage, my staff will review it. As long as it's during business hours, we can generally review it and move you forward, within the hour or, a couple of hours at most. If there's issues with your intent to apply, like maybe you said something in your project description that is like an ineligible activity, like homelessness prevention or something like that, or emergency shelter, we would send it back to the intent to apply and send you an email that says, hey, you need to look at this part of your intent to apply. That's not an allowable activity or whatever. Invite you to ask any questions. And then you would just redo that and submit it again. If everything looks good on the first shot, we'll move it forward to the full application. You will get another email that says that you have access to the full application. And then in that space is where that's where the bulk of the application is, right? That's like where all the content from Appendix C and Appendix D are. That is also where you will upload your eSNAPS applicant profile and your eSNAPS project application, as well as your certification of consistency with the consolidated plan. Make sure that you read the RFP really closely for those specific sections, both the text of the RFP and Appendix A, which is like the application components, because there is some flexibility built in there, but you have to meet certain criteria and you have to still give us some information in order to be able to use the flexibility. For example, like the certification of consistency, that's one that's most often handled at the local level, and those processes for like collecting those documents vary pretty wildly. So as long as you have requested your certification of consistency by the 4th, and you have a record of a written request made by the 4th, if the 11th rolls around and you haven't gotten a response, you can submit some alternate documentation to get more time on that specific requirement. The same applies to your eSNAPS project application. So in order to if you've not been in eSNAPS before, or even if you have, it's one of those things that you have to relearn every year. I have to relearn it myself every year, and I'm in it constantly. I'm gonna let somebody else in here. So eSnaps project application, yeah, you do have to submit that to us for review, but you again can request additional time if you satisfy the requirements in the RFP. And I don't remember them off the top of my head, so I'm not going to try to list them out here. But yeah, so it's kind of both. You know, it's the apply application and the eSnaps application. Now, with the applicant profile, if your organization doesn't have one, it can be done in a matter of hours. It's not like a big, long, drawn out thing. I would highly encourage you to use the detailed instructions, and I can send you a link to those if you have not seen them yet. That is, in fact, whenever y'all ask questions, 99% of the time, I can answer a question by using the detailed instructions. Sometimes I can't. But
right, I have seen it, and I've
Good.
been looking into that. I just didn't know where to start. But I think that answers most of
can I
it
can I
for
ask,
now.
does your organization have an eSnaps applicant profile right now?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
we're going to have to create one.
Yeah, so if you don't have an eSnaps applicant profile, you need basically two things to create that, right? You need someone that has an eSnaps account, and then you need basic information about your organization, like your DUNS number and your your administrative office address, your authorized primary. But really, it's once you get in there and start moving, it becomes a little bit more intuitive than it feels at first, for sure. There's also actually this year a video that is not part of our materials, but I was just looking at that yesterday. Give me just a second and I will send that to you because I think that will help you a lot.
Okay.
And I'll put it in the chat so that people watching this recording get it as well. It's funny because HUD actually put it on YouTube, which I think is just so amusing.
I just started going down the rabbit hole of links. And
Oh yeah, you can get lost in there.
the office hours are about to end. I gotta go.
Yeah, you can definitely get lost in there. I would just I would stick to the specific reference materials that are in the RFP, and now this YouTube video, I think is also a really good one because it's helpful for visual learners for sure.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else you think I should know?
I mean, it's
Y'all are doing this again sometime soon, right?
Next Friday.
So we do this. Yeah,
Friday,
we are
okay.
doing. Yeah, we're doing these again. We're doing this again on Friday. The application closes, as you know, on Sunday of next week. So that'll be the last one that we do before the application period closes. But we will be doing them throughout the month of September, just to help support people through the process. Your eSnaps application is not part of the evaluation of the project application. So what that means is that historically, we have used eSnaps, like whether or not you follow the detailed instructions, as like a method of evaluating your project. This year, we're basing the evaluation entirely on what's in Apply and what's in Appendix C. And so, in Appendix C and Appendix D. And so that means that we're available to support y'all in the development of your eSnaps project application. I think, main things to know, consistency and continuity between the two platforms is paramount. And, making really sure that you understand the eligible activities is definitely a place that you want to start. I'm actually just noticing the ODB behind your name, and I think that must mean that you work in a community that I'm familiar with. There's also a lot of resources locally, if that's the case, in the northern part of the state. There's a lot of local resources that there's other folks that know, kind of how to navigate eSnaps and the application process as well.
Yes.
So I would lean on, local resources as well, besides just us. I don't know, Craig, is there anything that I'm forgetting?
I think that hit about everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot, there's no way around that. I mean, I won't deny it. It's an insane amount of work and an insane amount of time. And I wish it were different, and I can't make it different, unfortunately.
It is definitely not like this before.
No, it's not usually like this.
Okay, well, we learn as we go, and we'll do the best that we possibly can.
That's all we can do.
All you
That's
can
it.
do.
That's the same. We have the same mentality. We're just going to give it the best shot,
There you go.
and maybe something good will come from it. That's the hope.
I think definitely will.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Enjoy your Friday.
All right, take
Thank
care. Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Pause this recording.